evening, and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. La Republic's corrupt regime is fast frustrating youth. The future is bleak for youth in the Cameroons as a result of the aging La Republic's government with interest only in the selected few. This is pushing most of the youths to see traveling overseas as the only way out. They prefer to die en route to foreign lands than to die under the routine rulership of dictator Paul Biya and his selected friends. The war in Ambazonia declared by Paul Biya on the people, the peace-loving peoples of Ambazonia, has come to add to the Biya's regime-sponsored reasons why the youths prefer to die in the desert trying to flee the Cameroons. Corruption in the Cameroons increase, hence more insecurity in the Cameroons. The carnage in Amazonia has surpassed an alarming rate, and now we wonder if the international community is blind to the ongoing carnage in broad daylight in Amazonia. Whatever the case, Amazonians, as always in unity, have decided to protect their territory from lethal incursions of La Republic's terrorist forces, preparing even more to us this Saturday's draft. Well, we'll have the prime headlines give us more details on what's to come in the full briefings of Undaunted tonight.
All right, these are the prime headlines for today. The scars of La Republic de Cameroon's atrocities in Amazonia is still very much fresh. Now, this is because another corpse has been discovered at an advanced state of decomposition in Big Babanki. Road construction in Kumbo. All right, the Ambazonia Restoration Forces has been acknowledged in a very significant way. Also tonight, La Republic de Cameroon terrorist forces continues genocide on Amazonian youths. All right, La Republic de Cameroon's bad government compels youth to flee. Now, dozens of Amazonians are trapped in Algiers deportation camp. All right, also today, inhabitants of Mao 90 Msongwa gives a beating to a notorious thief. Kumbabui Ghastly Road accident claims many lives, and this is due to the bad road. Insecurity gains ground in La Republic de Cameroon, while spillovers of the ravaging war in Amazonia continues to spread its tentacles. And all the African scene, new sanction announced targeting the businesses associated with the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces. Also on the foreign scene, China and Taiwan loom large behind the Ukraine at the NATO summit. Now let's get the news in detail.
Our vision in this interim government is to make ABC a leader and a real war horse of our struggle. We want to grow it, expand it, hire and train more hands, and broadcast round the clock, around the world, and take command of the media space of this world.
You can enjoy all round the clock, 24/7 exclusive moments of bliss as an ABC Amba TV Club member. A cappella. Latest Nigerian stroke African movies, global politics, ABC Amba News and updates, historical documentaries, and lots more. In our daily programs, we have Undaunted, ABC Amba News, bringing into the news untold stories with Onyi Okpala and Star Smart. Exclusive discussion, revolutionary panel conversation, infotainment, edutainment, intro governmental debates on topical issues with Tar Paddy King, State of the Liberation Movement, Fronting IG, and People of Ambazonia's position, the Struggles Weekly Update with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASCE. Health is wealth, health education, and awareness within the Ambazonian community. with Dr. Yaya, Liberation Prayer, and Intercessory Ministry for Amazonia with Pastor Victor Mba, Our Freedom, Spiritual Awareness and Education for the Amazonian Community with Pastor Victor Mba and Pastor Commando, Church and Politics, Neutralizing the Myths and Preconceived Religious and Political Philosophies that limit the Christian involvement in the realms of decent politics with Pastor Commando, The Horizon, The Voice of the Amazonian Woman with Dr. Patience Abiedo and Lady Casey, Our Amber History, bringing to limelight the hidden history of Amazonia to the world with Pastor Commando, Appointment on Community Building, Education on Patriotism within the Amazonian Communities with Ma Rachel Itatima, Ethics for an Imagination, Watchdog of Basic Principles and Morals of a Nation at War with Ma Dorothy Ngwa. Upcoming programs: Pigeon News, Vernacular Talk Show, County Roots, Activists Corner, Amba Focus, only on ABC Amba Television. We the people, the voice of the voiceless. For 24/7 access, subscribe as a club member on www.abcambatv.com/subscribe.
As reported by Undaunted, since the colonial Republic of Cameroon soldiers invaded the Big Babanki on Sunday, June 11, 2023, the number of civilian corpses being discovered in the scene has increased. An unidentified body in an advanced state of decomposition has been discovered yesterday, Tuesday, July 11, 2023, by a roadside hawker in Big Babanki. Now, this implies the La Republic of Cameroon terrorist forces are still killing innocent ones in Big Babanki. Youths of Babanki have abandoned their sources of livelihood to flee for their lives. This has always been the plan of La Republic of Cameroon to cripple the economy of Amazonia. They had a leadway with their invitation of the fun of Big Babanki. Well, curiously enough, with the killing of the people of Big Babanki, the fun is having a cool head at the political capital of La Republic of Cameroon. The carnage in Amazonia is just too enormous. Even if the mouths of the international communities are full or their eyes are blind, Amazonians must not relent to see that La Republic of Cameroon must go. Who can be the identity of these recently discovered corpse? Of course, a son of someone or a husband to a wife. Well, it's on that sad note that will begin on Dante tonight. How are you doing, Sir?
Very well, Oni. Good evening, Amazonians. Another corpse has been discovered by the roadside of the sea bend after Mugi towards Bobi in Babanki. A photo of the mortal remains with Undaunted at an advanced state of decomposition was taken yesterday on Wednesday, July 11, 2023. It has been like this since the invasion of Big Babanki by the Colonial La Republic military men on Sunday, June 11, 2023, that is over a month ago. Yesterday clocked a month that the Colonial La Republic forces, at the request of the Fauna Big Babanki, entered the village. More than a dozen people have been killed by the Colonial La Republic military deployed to Big Babanki. As days go by, more corpses are still being discovered, killed by the occupational forces of La Republic. The one discovered yesterday just adds to the numerous numbers of sons and daughters of Big Babanki that the terrorist soldiers have assassinated. The youthful population alerted the village to escape unwanted killings perpetrated by the thugs of Bia. All this is happening with the fun, relaxing, having a time out of his palace.
All right, moving on, the Amazonian Restoration Force's strength has become a force to be reckoned with. It is interesting to hear the colonial surrogates pleading for the Amazonian Restoration Forces to allow them to do some work. They are recognized. Now, these are the same people, all the same people who brag about how their colonial forces can protect them and that with their armored cars they can do and undo.
Well, it is funny here that before the commencement of the construction work of the Mambanda Road in Kumba leading to Lum, they know that the Amazonian Restoration Forces can stop them at any time despite the armored cars at their disposal. The Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Maymay County has pleaded for the Amazonian Restoration Forces to allow engineers carry on with a road construction project in Kumba.
Engineers working on the rehabilitation of the 33-kilometer road linking Mbambada in the Kumba 3 local government area of the Atlantic zone of Amazonia and the Loom in La Republic to Cameroon have said that the transportation of persons and farm produce using the stretch will be possible within a month. The road is presently not usable and inhabitants have to travel a distance 120 kilometers, passing through Bekoko Douala to get to Lyon. Now, this project has been programmed in three phases. The first phase is the bulldozing, total opening since the road is already closed from the Kumba Point right to the Loom. Ndofo Daniel, the engineer coordinating the work, said.
Well, as we talk, the opening has been done from the loom right up to the Mungo Bridge. So we decided now to bring the equipment to Kumba to complete the other section that is left right to the bridge, he added. Chamberlain Nsundong, the colonial SDO of Mime, has pleaded with the population to tell the Amazonian Restoration Forces to allow the work to go on. The Colonial SDO has pleaded that they should support the work that's going on, talk to the people, the ARFs in the bushes to allow the development. Well, this goes a long way to show that the Colonial SDO recognizes the authority of the ARFs, and it says once the works are completed, the rehabilitated road is expected to ease the transportation of farm produce to other areas.
Moving on, a young innocent Amazonian student is giving up the ghost, unable to sustain the beating given to him some months ago by the occupational forces of La Republic de Cameroon. Rao was seriously beaten with the La Republic de Cameroon element of the Air Force stationed at the Ngoham neighborhood of Bamenda. Terrorizing is a strategy that the occupational forces of La Republic de Cameroon adopt anytime they invade and choose to settle in a neighborhood. They start their stay by inflicting fear in the hearts of everyone. They flog people mercilessly, mostly, especially the youth, of course. It is the colonial mentality.
Well, a faction of the Colonial La Republic Air Force Battalion occupying a residence around the Cow Junction in Gungam on one of their atrocious days inflict serious beatings on inhabitants of the locality. Among others, beaten was a young Rao. Rao has been battling with the health consequences of the torture until this very morning when he took his last breath. A young man, Undaunted, got his name Rao in his early 20s, 25 precisely, died this morning, today, Thursday, July 13th, from injuries incurred some months back.
Innocent Rao is one of many inhabitants of the Ngoham neighborhood in Bamenda that the terrorist military forces gave some severe beating for being alive. For months now, Rao has been nursing wounds sustained from the beating inflicted on him by the Colonial Republic of Cameroon military. Since the torture, he hasn't been fine health-wise. Unable to stand the pain and discomfort from such inhuman torture, Rao died this morning.
Well, Rao, in his primary studies, went to Catholic school in Gongam and secondary school at GCHS in Queen when he had computer studies. The young man who was full of life, hope, and a great future ahead of him was the only boy and the last child of his parents. It's a very, very unfortunate loss. Rao comes to add to the number of innocent and vibrant Amazonians that La Republic terrorist forces have summarily executed.
La Republic de Cameroon's corrupt regime is fast frustrating youths. The future is bleak for youth in the Cameroons as a result of the aging La Republic de Cameroon's government with interest only in the selected few. This is pushing most of the youth to see traveling overseas as the only way out. They prefer to die en route to foreign land than to die under the routine leadership of dictator Paul Biya and his selected friends. The war in Ambazonia, declared by Paul Biya and the people of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, has come to add that Biya's regime sponsored reasons while the youth prefer to die in the desert trying to flee the Cameroons. A group of Ambazonians, amongst other Africans, languishing in Algeria deportation camps, why most Biya's regime choose to put the youth in a tight corner is what we still don't understand.
Well, Amazonians are once again victims of a mass deportation process in Algeria, months after the uproar caused by homophobic attacks against blacks in Tunisia. In the past few days, over 100 African citizens have been locked up in a deportation camp in Algeria, the capital of Algeria, going through untold hardship. Most of the Amazonian held in deportation camps had been in Algeria for several years before the recent wave of mass deportation by the Algerian authorities. Most of the arrested victims are women and children, most of whom fled from the Cameroons due to the social political instability in the country and Amazonia in particular, are now locked up in Algiers with little or no access to necessities like healthcare and water. Mimefo Ifo successfully contacted on the phone one of several detained at a deportation camp to give an insight into what is going on in Algeria. The victim testifies that we have been living here for so long and we left the Cameroons because of the war in Amazonia.
Well, just like what was the case in Tunisia a few weeks ago, a massive raid has been launched on blacks in Algeria, particularly Cameroonians and Nigerians for deportation. Arrested victims claim the Algerian authorities are doing so illegally and are equally frustrated by the silence of the international community. The source in Algeria says they are trying to illegally remove them illegally from Algeria and send them into the desert in Niger. Many people have already been sent there, and hundreds more are in deportation camps. While he also admitted that they have been targeted due to the lack of documents of legal residence in the country.
While the living conditions in these deportation camps are very deplorable, and vulnerable persons with the need for special attention are facing tough conditions. It is the case of a pregnant Nigerian lady whose name was said to be Abigail from Ogun State in Nigeria. Having been barred access to a public hospital due to her condition, she was reportedly put to bed in the camp, void of medical assistance. Her health condition and that of the child are reportedly hanging by a thread, much to the disregard of the Algerian authorities.
Well, arrested deportees are calling on the international community to break the silence over what is going on in Algeria. Most of them say the risk much worse off they are forcefully kicked out of the country.
A notorious chief that has made life difficult for inhabitants of Mile 90 in Bamenda, the chief town of the Midland zones of Amazonia, has received a serious beating from an angry mob after a failed robbery attempt. Adopting a means of livelihood is a matter of choice. While others eat from their sweat, others decide to live from the sweat of others. One will wonder what made this young person full of energy employ all his strength in stealing from others who have worked hard for what they have. A young man in his prime who has chosen to be operating from this act has met his end after being beaten by an angry mob, unfortunately.
Well, just jungle justice is like a normal redress for recalcitrant members of the society because all have lost confidence in the colonial Republic de Cameroon forces of law and order. Is it right? Of course not. But when all hope is lost from security forces, what then can a helpless people do? It pains the population to see an armed robber handed to the Colonial Republic to Cameroon forces of law and order on the streets. The next day, he becomes a free man after bribing the so called forces of law and order. Now, to stop this malpractice on the part of the colonial occupation La Republic to Cameroon forces of law and order, the people have adopted jungle justice as a new normal, which is even wrong. Well, for them, with jungle justice, torture to death is a sentence reserved for enemies of peace and serenity. Well, despite the recent voices against a mob justice or jungle justice, society is aggrieved at this point because the colonial La Republic the Cameroon forces of law and order have betrayed the trust of the people.
Well, the notorious thief by the name Fonbless specialized in pulling off people's electricity cable, connections, and toilet pots and sink in an attempt yesterday to steal from a home. It was his last, sadly, as he was caught in the act and lynched by this angry mob.
No, 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 no. Jama, boy, Jama. Jama, boy. Jama. Yeah, Jama game, Ike Bolo. Don't know what's the boy. Jama game Bolo.
All right, moving on. Another sad news reaching ABC Amber TV says at least four persons have been confirmed dead following a ghastly accident that occurred on the Kumbabuya Road in the southern zone on Tuesday, July 11th, on the hill from Bombay, Bakundu, descending to Long Street, Banga, Bakundu in Mbongi local government area. Well, the report maintains that the tragic incident resulted from a head on collision between two trucks, and the two drivers and two of the assistants, commonly known as motorboys, died on the spot.
Well, one of the trucks was transporting household edible and non-edible goods, reported a local media, adding that many people invaded the area a few minutes after the accidents to steal the goods before the arrival of the forces of law and order, while the corpses of the victims were still at the scene. The incident brought circulation along the said stretch of the road at standstill, leaving hundreds of travelers stranded. Many have attributed the fatal incidents to overspeeding, reckless driving, and non-respect of the highway code. But then, are the roads good to start with?
Another report reaching ABC Amber TV has confirmed once more that two kidnapped women jumped off the fourth floor in an attempt to escape from their abductors. The two Ngonchono and Christiel were kidnapped by suspected human travelers and traffickers in La Republic de Cameroon's political capital, Yaoundé, where they were abducted and held hostage in a furnished apartment located in the Etsos neighborhood. Well, according to reports, the kidnappers demanded the sum of 250 francs CFA, which was handed over to them, but they held the two women hostage despite the payment. One of the hostages, contacting a member of the family, would send the sum of 250,000 francs CFA to the thugs, but unfortunately, will not regain her freedom as they were promised.
Well, the Nkol Missing Brigade of the Colonial La Republique Gendarmerie, after interrogations, revealed that the two ladies decided to flee while the kidnappers were asleep. One of the mothers was cushioned in her fall by an object, while the second landed with her buttocks on the ground, fracturing several parts of her body, wrote a blogger. The injured victim was later rushed to the Yaoundé Central Hospital by elements of the Mimboman Army Rescue Unit. During interrogations, one of the victims confessed to having seen human skull in the apartment where they were kept.
Well, in the course of a raid, a certain Copa Toka Williams, alleged to be one of the suspects, was arrested. Another suspect, Bemi Chimbi, was later arrested by gendarmes from the Nkomisang Brigade in Vam, while investigations are still going on. Well, since the 7 years genocidal war started in Ambazonia, many denizens have fallen victims to men and women of the underworld, and most of them being Amazonian denizens fleeing the war. Well, many have been killed in cold blood as they arrive Yaoundé or Douala, while the women and the girls are raped. Young Amazonian war victims struggling to make a living have been their stories so far. Coming up next is African News.
Back to the war in Sudan, the UK has yesterday, July 12th, imposed new sanctions on businesses which are fueling the devastating conflict in Sudan by providing funding and arms to the warring militias. These sanctions will ensure that any assets held in the UK by these conglomerates and companies will be frozen. The strict measures on companies controlled by the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, will limit their financial freedom from preventing UK citizens, companies, and banks from dealing with them and put pressure on the parties to engage in the peace process. Almost 3 months of violence in Sudan has resulted in 25 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, over 2.2 million internally displaced, and 682,000 people estimated to have fled to neighboring countries. And therefore, there are also reports of increasing ethnic violence.
Well, the war has been exacerbated and prolonged by the vast financial empires supporting the SAF and the RSF. The multi-billion dollar conglomerates and companies associated with both parties have provided them with a steady source of funds and weapons, enabling the continuation of fighting, which is atrocities committed against civilians. The UK has designated six commercial entities in total, with each of the two warring parties having three associated businesses targeted. These sanctions will send a strong message to those providing funding and supplies to the SAF and SRSF that the ongoing conflict is unacceptable and the violence must stop.
Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says these sanctions are directly targeted those whose actions have destroyed the lives of millions. Both sides have committed multiple ceasefire violations in a war which is completely unjustified. Innocent civilians continue to face the devastating effects of the hostilities, and we simply cannot afford to sit by and watch as money from these companies, all funding the RSF or SAF, is spent on a senseless conflict. Working with international partners, he says, we'll continue to do all we can to support a meaningful peace process, stop the violence, and secure free humanitarian access. These new measures are aimed at pressing the parties driving the conflict to engage in a sustained and meaningful peace process, stop blocking life saving humanitarian aid into Sudan, and end the violence and atrocities ultimately.
Well, Minister for Development in Africa, Andrew Mitchell, said in his words, the SAF and RSF has dragged Sudan into a wholly unjustified war, with utter disregard for the Sudanese people, and must be held accountable. These sanctions are designed to pressure the parties to engage in a meaningful and lasting peace process. These sanctions will not impact vital aid to the region and include a humanitarian exemption, ensuring that aid can continue to be delivered by the UN and other eligible organizations.
The UK continues to pursue all diplomatic avenues to end the violence, de-escalate tensions, and secure safe humanitarian access, including engaging with the UN Security Council, Africa Union, and other partners to achieve this. The businesses sanctions announced yesterday are companies associated with the RSF, which includes Al Junaid, a large Rapid Support Forces owned conglomerate set up by Rapid Support Forces leader Mohammed Hamdan Gallo Hemeti. This company has provided at least tens of millions in financial backing for the militia, enabling it to continue the conflict. GSK Advanced Company Limited, a key front company owned by the Rapid Support Forces, providing some funding to the militia to support the purchase of material.
Tradive General Trading Company, a company associated with Rapid Support Forces, supplying it with funds and materials such as vehicles retrofitted with machine guns for the RSF to patrol the streets, while the company associated with the RSF. The Defense Industry System, a large Sudan armed forces, which owns a conglomerate which provides some of the finances for General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to continue fighting. Defensive industry system has over 200 companies and makes a profit of $2 billion per annum. Sudan Master Technology, a Sudanese company involved in the sale of arms with close commercial ties to defense industry system. The economic and manufacturing arm of the Sudan Armed Forces, which supplies it with funds and equipment. Zadna International Company for Investment Limited, a subsidiary of DIS owned by the Sudan Armed Forces and reported to be one of its top three major owners. These are the businesses targeted for sanctions, and they are associated with the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces.
Well, one can say this is an active step towards ending the war in Sudan, but then sanctions have proven to consequently contribute to the increased number of migrants. So we wonder if there is something else that could be effectively done to end the war without eventually contributing to increased African migration.
And on the foreign scene, the presence of four Asia Pacific leaders at the NATO summit this week suggests that Ukraine is not the only major security issue on the agenda of the European North American Defense Alliance. The war in Ukraine has brought members of the US led alliance closer than any at any time since the Cold War. And on Monday, NATO Secretary General James Stoltenberg summed up their collective concerns that what is happening in Ukraine today could occur in Asia tomorrow.
The Chinese government's increasingly coercive behavior abroad and repressive policies at home challenge NATO's security, values, and interests. This is Stoltenberg writing on the Foreign Affairs website. Autocratic nations, including China, were looking at Russia's actions in Ukraine and weighing the cost and benefits of offensive actions, he said. On Tuesday, the US led alliance underscored these concerns, making several references to China in a strongly worded communique issued midway into the 2 day summit, in which it said Beijing's stated ambitions pose systemic rather challenges to Euro-Atlantic security.
While noting the alliance remained open to constructive engagement with China, it singled out what it said was the deepening strategic partnership, which was between Beijing and Moscow, and their mutually reinforcing attempts to undercut the rules based international order. And in language that closely mirrored Stoltenberg's earlier remarks, the leaders' communique condemned China's confrontational rhetoric and disinformation. China employs a broad range of political, economic, and military tools to increase its global footprint and major power while remaining opaque about its strategy, intentions, and military buildup. While they noted that communique, which called on Beijing to abstain from supporting Russia's war effort in any way.
While neither Stoltenberg nor the joint communique named the island of Taiwan, the self governing democracy is the most obvious point of comparison with recent events in Europe, given China's ruling Communist Party remains committed to unifying it with the mainland by force if necessary. For its part, China says Taiwan is an internal matter and it sees no role for countries in the region, let alone NATO members, to be interfering. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said at a regular press briefing in May that we will not allow anyone or any force to meddle in China's own affairs under the disguise of seeking peace.
Well, Taiwan's defense ministry noted high numbers of Chinese military aircraft in the skies around the island on Wednesday after the NATO's communique was issued. In the hours of after 7 a.m. local time, it said 30 People's Liberation Army aircraft were detected, including 23 that either crossed the median lane of the Taiwan Strait or entered the southeastern and southwestern sections of its air defense identification zone. That activity followed 32 Chinese warplanes making similar flights as of 6 a.m. local time. Boy is drafting on Saturday. There is an editorial that will definitely interest you. Stir Smart recorded it from Tuesday just for your listening pleasure. Now let's watch.
In our editorial for tonight, we have an overview of Boyi County, with a focus discovering Boyi County, its history, its culture, and its beautiful tourist sites. Let's start with Kumbo Council, brief presentation of the council area. The heart of Boyi County beats in Kumbo, the second largest town in the Midland zone of southern Cameroon, with a surface area of 630 square kilometers. Kumbo is about 110 kilometers away from Bamenda, the chief town of the Midland region. Population-wise, Kumbo counts over 216,000 inhabitants, spread in over 43 villages, including Bambui, Banzeng, Bamkikai, Bamcove, Bangam, Fur Cove, Jim, Vekakwi, Kai, Keri, Kikaikom, Kikiakalaki, Kiko, Kimbo, Kingomen, Kishi, Kitiwum, Kitumen, Kian, Kongir, Marem, Mba, Mboku, Mbotong, Mbuluf Ve, Melim Muluf Zin Nzenji, Njaviun, Nkuf, Ntongi, Nseni, Rovi Tangta, Romanjai, Sakir, Shisong, Shuf, Tadu, Tobin, Toi, Ye. The main language he spoke here is the Nso language. Furthermore, there are other ethnic groupings within the municipality. These include Noni, Kom, Oku, Mbiame, Wimbum, and the Fulani Bororo. They each have their own languages. Kumbo shares its boundaries with Nkum to the north, Mvame to the east, and to the south by Jakiri, then to the west by Oku Noni. It is a mountainous town with three distinctive hilly settlements, the Tobin, Mvei, and Squares. In Kumbo, there is a wide diversity of landscapes, and its rivers are punctuated with rapid, spectacular waterfalls with boiling foams. These waterfalls empty themselves into the main rivers of the town rivers Bui and Rukimbo. It is worth noting that Bui got its name from River Bui, while Kimbo, which is the original appellation for Kumbo, got its name from River Rukimbo. Tobin, one of the major settlements, is the administrative seat of the town. They is the commercial center, and Squares harbors the residence of the paramount fund of Unso, known as Ntoso. The urban space of the Kumbo Council area is characterized by population concentration in Vey, Tobin, Kimbo Squares, and Shisong, with as expanse of empty land in between. Each population concentration has its own peculiarity as follows. Tobin is the government residential area with many office and residences. The population of Shisong was attracted by the existence of the early Catholic Church, followed by the existence of the St. Elizabeth's Hospital. And they is the main commercial area, having the main market of the council area. This is also the main center of the Muslim population. The population of Kimbo Squares is influenced by the presence of the cathedral, the main Presbyterian church, the Baptist hospital, and the Unso Palace. There is also a market and other economic activities taking place. The population decreases as one moves away from these core areas. Now, the historical profile. Kumbo Council was created in since 1977 out of the defunct Nso Area Council, which was created from the Southwestern Federation with headquarters in Ndop. Before the creation of the council, His Royal Highness the Fon of Nso, Sem Ata, administered Nso with assistance from the funds of Oku, Mbiame, Nse, Nkar, and Zin. These funds had a common council presided at by the Fon of Nso, where they planned and made rules to keep away all evils from their various fundoms. The funds were members, and so shared boundaries with people of Kom, Boom, Babungo, Babesi, Fumban, Ntame, and Mbun. Each fund respected his own position, and there was no power wrangling. They lived in harmony with each other. Colonial administration grouped Nso, Bafut, Ndop, and native authorities to the Bamenda Southeastern Federation of Native Authorities in the 1940s. The Nso Native Authorities split up from the Union in 1960, and by 1st April 1961, the Nso Area Council was created, which administratively fell under a subdivision. Nso rose to a subdivision that is local government area now on November 4th, 1963, and became a full division that is county on December 15th, 1966. And according to the interim government's geopolitical nomenclature, it is qualified a county. Evolutionally, the Kumbo Council was created in 1977. Kimbo, which constitutes the largest part of the Kumbo urban municipality, is the center of the whole Kumbo town and has a long history behind it. It is the seat of Nso Fundum. Fon Simbum migrated in 1820 to Kimbo and started with the construction of the Nso Palace from Kovi Fem, which is the residence of the present Fon. The famous cathedral of the landmarks of Kumbo was constructed in 1955. Its foundation stone was laid by Sembu Atar, Fon of Unso, in February 1955, under the pastoral leadership of His Lordship Bishop P. Rogan. Now let's take a look at the brief Nso history. The Nso Fundum, a typical grass field of southern Cameroon's way of saying kingdom, since they call their king a Fon, was actually started by a woman, And this woman, Ngongso, was a princess of another tribe in the Adamawa regions of the Cameroons and Nigeria. But she left that tribe along with her two brothers when a dispute between lineage and succession arose in the early 13th. The three siblings traveled to the northwest, but before they could settle anywhere together, arguments arose and they each went their separate ways, each to establish a separate tribe. Small following of loyal friends arrived in the Kovi Fem area and established themselves as the benevolent rulers over the people that were already living there. After the death of Ngongso, one of her sons became Fon, and from that point forward, the position of Fon has been inherited by men, sons of the Fon Nso. The Nso tribe grew quickly, and the Fon's power came not from material wealth, but strong adherence to traditional hierarchy and the belief that the Fon was not just a single man, but the representation of all the ancestors ruling over the people. This meant that for the ruling class, these traditions were much more important than becoming rich. So over the years, the taboos, secret societies, and hierarchical structures of the Nso society transformed from beliefs to facts. For example, even people that have been educated abroad and spent time away from Banso will tell you that they can explain why, but if you break certain societal rules, bad things eventually happen. In one recent incident that occurred before the arrival to the post, a few German volunteers living in Kumbu had a large quantity of electronics stolen from their apartment. They knew that the thief had to be among a certain group of people that were present on that night, and so after the police and gendarmes investigated and told them it was hopeless, the girls went to the phone. Members from the Werong Society, a secretsmen only society that functions, amongst other things, as a peacekeeping force, went to each of the people on this list, inviting them to the palace on a certain date to swear that they were innocent of the crime. Every Banso man and woman know that if you lie in the face of the fawn and nobility, you will be cursed forever, and horrible things will happen to you, according to the tradition. Now, the girls awaited, and the day before the appointed oath swearing was to take place, every single stolen item was found on their porch, wrapped in plastic. Pretty amazing power, isn't it? Well, after some time, no one seems to be able to give a good time estimate, but it would have to be before the arrival of the Germans to the Midland zones, that is in the late 18th. Now, the social organization, the Nso people have a very strong social spirit that can be compared to only a few ethnic groups within the Midland region of southern Cameroon. Traditionally, at the level of the family, there is a very strong bond between parents and children. More so, each family is attached to a big compound whose head has certain powers over the families that fall under it. He relates with the village head and at times with the fawn when need be. Here, there is a shrine where the ancestors are invoked in times of ill health, marriage, farming, etc. At the level of the village, there exists either a Shufai or a Fei who commands a lot of respect and authority, and is compared only next to the fawn. Therefore, he represents the fawn at this level. Like the head of the big compound, he performs certain rites to cleanse the village. Therefore, he is seen as a priest of the ancestral cult and relates directly with the fawn and contributes in enacting laws executed by Ngwerong. He also arbitrates in conflict that occur within the village. There are some Shufais who are traditional lineage heads with hereditary titles, Vibai Viwang. The ancestors of these lords were at Kovi Fem and served as close advisors to the fawn. The second group, Vibai Vinso, came to Nso as independent chiefs and surrendered their royal prerogatives to the fawn of Nso. They were thus allowed to rule their villages as Shufais. They are not admitted into the exclusive club of the seven Kebai Ke Samba. They include Shufai Senla of Kikai Kilaki, Shufai Donrun, and Shufai Dongwen, both of Kichuum. The third group is known as Vibai Vepu or Vibai Dui. They are equally seven in number, and they're great lords who carry out the burial of the fawn and are charged with the maintenance of the royal grave huts. These include Bashwin, Shubui, Njavinu, Nzim, Zenziv, Ntinting, Bambui, in replacement of Senlayer, Tawe, and Kongir. Now let's take a look at the secret society. Membership into secret societies is generally limited to certain classes or groupings. These societies are equally close to the fun and to power, and their members are constituted from among the common or distant relatives of the royal lineage. In Gwerang, membership here is drawn from Unso male commons, nobles of no royal descent, Vibai, Zenzev, Tangkum, and Lun, the fun of Unso. Some sources hold that it was acquired at Kovifem when Shufai Tangkum surrendered it to the Nso people alongside his chieftaincy title in a bid to join the Nso people. Other sources hold that the Nso people had a form of Ngwerong which was only strengthened by that acquired from Shufai Tanko. Now, in Ngiri, this institution developed as a result of the fact that princes of Nso were forbidden from participating in the Ngwerung. This is because the Fon who was chosen from among the princes wielded too much power, and if princes who were naturally the brothers of the Fon were to control Ngwerung, there would be no counterforce to absolute dictatorship by the royal family. There is a lot of confusion as to when Ngiri was created or by whom. However, its tikar is clear, especially from Bamun. This could be justified by the fact that most tribes have close link with the Bamun, and the Bamun themselves have the Ngiri society. This institution grew to a point where it started usurping the functions of Ngwerong. This was checked in 1935 when Ngwerong agents raided and destroyed the Ngiri shrine. Some degree of rivalry still occurred though. Membership into Ngiri is limited to princes and the Dui. Before 1935, princesses could belong to Ngiri, but today no woman is allowed. The Ngiri is strictly considered by the Nso people as a princely fraternity with little administrative functions. However, some senior members of Ngiri are advisors to the fund and do participate in some policy issues. The Manjong. This institution evolved as the traditional militia and an organ from waging war when the Inso people were still at Kovifem, in the absence of any formal army. Any Inso man fit enough, brave enough, and patriotic enough belonged to the Manjong. This was a very important institution, given the need at the time to protect the Inso people and land and to carry out policies of spreading Inso hegemony. Members supplied their own weapons and war attire and were always ready when summoned by the traditional war draw. Mfomi and other military titles developed. The Manjung later acquired the Mfu War Lodge from the Bamum as war booty, and it has become a very important lodge today. Other lodges created include Nchoro, Juing, and Meku. In the absence of intertribal wars, members of the Manjung showed their prowess during the Fon's annual hunting expedition in its two reserves of Mbokam and Bokuiven. This has died out with the prohibition by the government of the killing of most wild animals. Presently, the members of the four lodges of the Mahjong simply meet regularly, share wine, and discuss issues concerning the Unso people and information from the palace. However, the functions of the Mahjong have been redirected towards communal labor. It is very active in construction and maintenance of roads, bridges, schools, and more. As you know, we're in the drafting season, which is why we'll continue this piece with the Nkum local government area, Jakiri local government area, Nko local government area, and Mbiame local government area. But for now, we've come to the end of our editorial for tonight. If you want more such beautiful articles, kindly visit our website at www.abcambertv.com for more. Subscribe, become a club member, and a part of this winning strategy. Find out payment details on your screen. I am Star Smart, reporting for Undaunted ABC Amber TV.
All right, thank you so much, Steph Smart, for that editorial. And I'm sure that you all are ready to draft for Bui come Saturday. With that, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But before we go, let's take a look at our major stories.
On Undaunted tonight, we brought to you another corpse discovered at an advanced state of decomposition in Big Babanki. We also brought to you the La Republic surrogate acknowledging the authority of the Amazonian Restoration Forces. We told you La Republic terrorist forces continues their genocide on Amazonian youths as La Republic soldier torture a young innocent Amazonian full of dreams till he died. La Republic's bad government compelled youth to flee as dozens of Amazonians trapped in Algeria deportation camps.
Right tonight, we told you of a mob action. Inhabitants of Maoniton and Sogwa gives a severe beating to a notorious thief. A ghastly road accident claims 4 lives. Also, insecurity gains ground in La Republic to Cameroon as spillover of the ravaging war in Ambazonia continues. All right, and on the African scene, we told you that UK has sanctioned businesses funding the Sudan war. And of course, on the foreign scene, we talked about the NATO summit as China and Taiwan looms large behind Ukraine at the NATO summit. And that was it for tonight on Ted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of Star Smart and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you for tuning in.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber TV images. Good night and God bless you.